Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Olson, for opening remarks, Amendment H8007.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen in the House. I agree with Representative Baltimore that e-cigarettes should not be sold to minors or possessed by minors, and my guess is that many of you here today agree with that as well. Also, for this year at least, I agree that we should not be having a discussion about, or at least it's not time yet to have a discussion about, whether e-cigarettes should be taxed the same way as traditional cigarettes or whether or not they should be subject to the Smoke-Free Air Act. So I think the question then really becomes, are we going to ban the sale of all e-cigarettes to minors, and are we going to make sure that we don't move backwards on tobacco control measures that we put in place over the last few years? I have two major concerns with House File 2109 as it's written. The first is that the bill actually legalizes the sale of some e-cigarettes to minors. It legalizes the sale of e-cigarettes that don't have nicotine to minors. Some have nicotine, some don't. Now, obviously, the ones that don't have nicotine don't have the potential for the chemical addiction. You know, we all know the addictive nature of nicotine, and those aren't going to be present in e-cigarettes that don't have nicotine. But there also is the socialization, the normalization of a teenager, 14, 15-year-old, going to the store, buying an e-cigarette that maybe doesn't have nicotine, and smoking that e-cigarette with their friends. And the habits that forms then as they might reach the age of 18 and able to purchase traditional cigarettes. So I think it's not just the nicotine that causes that habit forming. And I want to make sure that all e-cigarettes, whether they have nicotine or don't, are kept out of the hands of minors. The non-nicotine e-cigarettes also come in flavors, as many of you all know, cherry, grape, and others. Those are clearly intended to be marketed to minors. In this amendment, and I want to make sure that the bill then, as it ends up, bans the sale of all e-cigarettes to minors, particularly ones that the bill leaves out, you know, those that are might have fruit flavor. Now, the second problem that I have with the bill is that there is the potential to take items that are currently subject to the state's excise tax out from under that tax. The bill provides a definition of alternative nicotine product, as Representative Baltimore stated. In that definition, then, items that fall under that definition are not subject to the state excise tax. Now, part of that definition talks about products that are dissolved, that are snorted, that are sniffed. So I asked the Department of Revenue to give me the list of items that are currently subject to state excise tax. That list includes snus, snuff, dissolvables, and a whole range of more traditional tobacco products. So I believe that the definition of alternative nicotine product includes or would take some of those items like dissolvables out from under the current excise tax and actually reduce the tax that we have on certain tobacco products. I asked the Department of Revenue if they thought that was the case. They responded yes. The Attorney General's office also had concerns. And so I really want to make sure that, we don't hold the status quo. We all want to make sure they're banned. But the bill as written, I believe, would take us a step back from current tobacco control measures. So this amendment fixes both of those problems. It includes in the definition of e-cigarette both those with nicotine and without nicotine. It makes sure that all items that are currently subject to excise tax remain subject to excise tax. Now, as many of you all know, Iowa has made great strides in the last 5 or 6 years in reducing the number of Iowans that smoke and that use tobacco products. And that's resulted in public health benefit. Studies have shown in that time that there are fewer admissions to the emergency room for heart-related disease, lung-related disease. And it's also saved the state a lot of money because, as we all know, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars through Medicaid paying for smoking-related illnesses. So I want to make sure in this bill, and this amendment does that we maintain that leading position, that we make sure that we don't backslide on the efforts that we've made, one, to protect public health, but also to save taxpayer money. Mr. Speaker, those are my opening comments.
Is there discussion? Chair recognizes Gentleman Boone, representing Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, with regards to Representative Olson's first point that this bill does not regulate non-nicotine vapor products, I guess once you remove the cancer-causing smoke from the equation and once you remove the addictive nicotine from the equation, what you're really regulating is a plastic tube with humidity. The second point that Representative Olson makes with regards to the potential to take things out of the tax structure, this bill does not do that. If the products that Representative Olson is concerned about are currently considered to be tobacco products under the taxation scheme, they would continue. This bill does not change that, and I disagree with that contention. But nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I would question whether this amendment is germane.
Will the gentleman from Boone and the gentleman from Lane approach the well? Representative Baltimore, your point is well taken. The amendment is not germane. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Marshall, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats will caucus in room 305.
With the Democrats going to caucus, the House will stand at ease. House come to order. Chair recognizes Gentleman Lynn, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we suspend the rules to consider Amendment 8007 and ask for a division in the record.
Gentleman Lynn moves for a rule suspension and immediate consideration of Amendment H8007. Requests a division in a record. The clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Seconded by the gentleman from Polk, Representative Hunter. This is a record roll call vote. Hall votes aye. Taylor of Dallas votes no. Highfill votes no. Hagenow votes no. Miller of Scott votes no. Burns votes no. Huseman votes no. Dio votes no. Hine votes no. Bacon votes no. Hartsill votes no. Brandenburg votes no. Maxwell votes no. Costello votes no. Pettengill votes no. Drake votes no. Wood votes aye. Grassley votes no. Sands votes no. Have you all now voted? Clerk, close machine, record your vote. House give attention results vote. Those voting aye 45, nay 51, absent not voting for. The motion for the rule suspension fails. Clerk, call the next amendment.
H8009 by Meyer of Polk.
Chair recognizes Gentleman Polk. Representative Meyer for opening remarks. Amendment H8009.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this amendment simply adds the permitting system that is currently required to sell cigarettes or other tobacco products under current law. It simply adds that to these vaporized cigarettes, and it also has some cleanup language that fixes parts of the amendment, or fixes parts of the bill. Under the bill as it's written, there is no penalty for selling to a minor. There's a penalty for the clerk, but there is no penalty like there is for selling cigarettes or alcohol, for selling these vaporized cigarettes to a minor. And it simply adds all of that in under the permitting system and follows through on the penalty phase by Alcoholic Beverages Division. That's the amendment.
Is there discussion? Chair recognizes Gentleman Boone, representing Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, and thank you, Representative Meyer, for offering your amendment. I would ask the body, however, to oppose the amendment at this point in time, and I acknowledge that there are some changes that need to be made. We will have an amendment coming up somewhere in this chain that will address the concerns that are there. The amendment was brought to me by the retailer folks, and I think that they're going to be certainly okay with what we're doing, and it does address some of these flaws. So at this point in time, I would ask that we resist the amendment and take up the permitting deficiencies in a later amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes Gentleman from Polk, Representative Meyer, for closing remarks on Amendment H8009.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand where Representative Baltimore is coming from. I know he has his own amendment. I believe mine to be more thorough. I think we're going to have to come back and fix things in the bill if we don't take this amendment. But I understand that his is a shorter amendment. It goes directly to the permitting, but mine is more thorough, and I'll ask for a division in record, but I'll move the amendment.
The gentleman from Polk moves adoption of Amendment H009, has requested a division in a record. The clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Seconded by the gentleman from Polk, Representative Abdul Samad. This is now a record roll call vote. Sands votes no. Stade votes aye. Forbes votes aye. Murphy votes aye. Highfill votes no. Hagenow votes no. Miller of Webster votes aye. Miller of Scott votes no. Costello votes no. Taylor of Dallas votes no. Hartzell votes no. Grassley votes no. Huseman votes no. Maxwell votes no. Bacon votes no. Hanusa votes no. Worthen votes no. Drake votes no. Have you all now voted? Clerk, close machine, record your vote. House give attention, results vote. Those voting aye 45, nay 51, absent voting for. The amendment fails. Clerk, call the next amendment.
H8006 by Baltimore Boone.
Chair recognizes Gentleman Boone, Representative Baltimore, for opening remarks. Amendment H8006.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Amendment H8006 is the first attempt to rectify some of the issues that Representative Meyer has brought forward, and there is a secondary amendment.
Clerk will call the next amendment.
H8011 by Baltimore Boone.
Chair recognizes Gentleman Boone, Representative Baltimore, for opening remarks on Amendment H8011.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Amendment H8011 is the second part of the amendment to fix the concerns. Eventually, we will get it right. So, again, this is to simply make sure that we're clear that the retailers out there need to get a permit and that there are the proper enforcement mechanisms in place for this, similar to selling tobacco products and cigarettes to minors.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, Gentleman Boone moves adoption of Amendment H8011. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is adopted. We are now on Amendment H8006 as amended. Is there discussion? Chair recognizes Gentleman from Polk, Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. Again, I support his amendment. I think it's better than nothing at this point, and I'd urge my fellow members to support the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the gentleman from Boone moves adoption of Amendment H8006. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is adopted. The clerk will call the next amendment.
H8008 by Ruff of Clayton.
Chair recognizes the lady from Clayton, Representative Ruff, for opening remarks on Amendment H8008.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What Amendment H008 does is bans alternative nicotine or vapor products from school property. A couple of weeks ago, my home district had 3 students that were using these products on the school bus. Students of all ages know that tobacco products are prohibited on school property. These students were pushing the rules knowing that these are not illegal for minors to possess. However, they do not grasp the ill effects that they will have, possibly starting an addiction to nicotine. This bill needs to be clarified, stating that we as a legislative body do not intend to have students, even 18-year-olds, those of legal age, to have these on school property. What this amendment does is simply adds another tool to further strengthen this bill in keeping these products out of the hands of those that we do not want to start an addiction. Thank you.
Is there discussion? Chair recognizes Gentleman from Boone, Representative Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I would simply note that school districts can, under current law and under the bill without this amendment, decide for themselves what products they would like to ban from their property. I would also note that the amendment as drafted would not address a school bus that is not on school district property. But that being said, Mr. Speaker, I would question whether or not this bill is, or this amendment is germane.
Would the gentleman from Boone and the lady from Clayton approach the well? Representative Baltimore, your point is well taken. The amendment is not germane. The chair recognizes the lady from Clayton, Representative Ruff. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent to suspend the rules to consider this amendment, and I move the House to consider H008 for division in a record.
There is an objection. You asked for unanimous consent. There's an objection.
To suspend the rules. Sorry. Yes, I move to suspend the rules.
Thank you.
To
Lady
consider
from
this
Clayton
amendment.
moves to suspend the rules for immediate consideration of Amendment H8008. And I understand she asked for a division in a record. It is seconded by the gentleman from Johnson, Representative Jacoby. The clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Highfill votes no. Moore votes no. Stannerson votes no. Kaufman votes no. Soderberg votes no. Hartzell votes no. Sands votes no. Hess votes no. Hagenow votes no. Drake votes no. Have you all now voted? Riding votes aye. Clerk will close machine, record your vote. House give attention to results of the vote. Those voting aye 43, nay 51, absent not voting 6. The amendment or the motion to suspend the rules has failed. That disposes of all amendments. We are now on House File 2109 as amended. Is there discussion? Chair recognizes the lady from Johnson, Representative Masher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I was looking forward to supporting an e-cigarette ban for minors. I'm not going to be able to do that today with this bill. And the reason I'm not going to be able to do that is because the majority party refused to allow provisions in the bill that would have made it stronger and safer for kids. Representative Olson, if you would yield. Representative Tyler Olson.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
You're in order.
Thank you, Representative Olson. In your particular amendment, was there a provision to ban both nicotine and non-nicotine e-cigarettes?
Yes.
Why did you think that was so important?
Well, the danger of addiction doesn't just lie in the chemical addiction of the nicotine, but also in the social normalization of the action of going to the store, buying an e-cigarette, and then smoking it. And so it's a two-prong danger of getting started, that then when you turn 18 and are able to buy a traditional cigarette, you start to do that.
Okay. Are there studies being done at the federal level currently to determine how dangerous these particular devices are?
Yes.
And do you know when we'll get the results of those kinds of studies?
I believe it's soon.
Okay. I assume one of the reasons why you brought your amendment forward is you wanted to protect kids, whether it was a nicotine product or not. I know that there's been concerns about K2, the methamphetamines, all of the different things that can be put into a vapor device like that. Is that a concern as well?
Well, I don't think there's any question there are many kinds of substances you can put into an e-cigarette, which is why I think the bill doesn't go far enough by only banning the sale of a certain category and then actually legalizing the sale of certain e-cigarettes to minors that they might use for that kind of thing.
Okay. Is it your hope that we can get a better bill back from the Senate?
I sure hope so, yes,
Okay.
Representative Masher.
I assume you would like to support this bill in a final version that includes protection for both the nicotine and the non-nicotine e-cigarettes, correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay, thank you, Representative Olson. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we missed our opportunity today. We had an opportunity to make a bill better, and this chamber chose not to do that. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for our minor kids. Representative Ruff, would you yield?
Will the lady yield?
Yes.
You're in order.
Representative Ruff, your amendment, did you believe it would make the bill a better bill?
Yes, I did.
Did you think it would allow districts to ban both the nicotine product and the non-nicotine product?
Yes.
The bill as it stands, will it allow us to ban the non-nicotine product?
No, not as it stands now.
Thank you. Representative Ruff had an amendment to make this a better bill, one that we could all support. I find it very, very discouraging, very unfortunate that we're sending a message to kids, okay to smoke some e-cigarettes, not others. We want to ban them all because we know the potential for kids to get addicted to those products is greater by allowing them to use both the non-nicotine and the nicotine product. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not be supporting this bill. I'd ask members of my body to do the same. We can do better. And when we work together, that product can be something we can all be proud of. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the lady from Johnson, Representative Lensing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, like 35 other states, Iowa is now looking at what type, if any, regulations for electronic cigarettes that we should adopt. The debate on e-cigarettes is not only in state houses across the country, but among medical associations, healthcare agencies, medical experts, the producers of e-cigarettes and their tobacco allies, employers, businesses, schools, cities, the United States Food and Drug Administration. It's also an issue in other countries such as France, Canada, Great Britain, and is of interest to the World Health Organization. The unanswered questions and lack of solid information because of the few studies that have been done or that have been completed permeate our current discussions. And just like the vapor of e-cigarettes, the information is hidden in the haze. Among the most pressing concerns are what are the long-term health care effects of e-cigarettes on both users and the people around them? Do e-cigarettes contain toxic chemicals? Do e-cigarettes really help people keep the smoking habit, or do they actually make it harder? If children start smoking e-cigarettes, are they likely to graduate to regular cigarettes? Is smoking e-cigarettes a gateway to nicotine products and traditional tobacco use? And where can e-cigarettes be used? Communities, schools, and employers want to know. In a January 16th edition of the Wall Street Journal, an article highlighted the smoke-free workplace dilemma, stating, most but not all vaping liquids contain nicotine, the addictive agent in cigarettes. Scientists largely concur that e-cigarettes emit fewer toxins than tobacco products, but critics contend that secondhand vapor is a pollutant and say more research is needed to understand its health effects. The FDA's Center for Tobacco Products has been collecting reports of adverse effects from e-cigarettes and pursuing complaints on physical side effects. The FDA is also set to begin field work on a behavioral study that will track 60,000 smokers and non-smokers for 2 years. It will examine if people are using e-cigarettes for cessation or if it is a gateway towards traditional tobacco use. Studies indicate that in nicotine e-cigarettes, there is nicotine exposure. Studies also indicate other compounds are present in the vapor, exposing not only the user, but bystanders. While this bill may regulate access of e-cigarettes to minors, they have been available to them and lured young people with their flavors. cherry, strawberry, vanilla, and cookies and cream, which appeal to youth. More and more middle school and high schoolers are reported to be using e-cigarettes. The CDC has found in recent data that the rate of teens reporting to have used an e-cigarette has doubled in the last year. The American Journal of Public Health indicates 53% of young adults in the United States who have heard of e-cigarettes believe they are healthier than traditional cigarettes, which has not yet been proved, and 45% believe they could help them quit smoking, although there is little evidence to support that claim. USA Today cites a study that half of young adults say if offered an e-cigarette by a friend, they would try it. Availability is still a problem. E-cigarettes are available online, and as reported in the Wall Street Journal, and among 60-plus kiosks around the country. There is an e-cigarette kiosk at our local shopping mall where the clerk demonstrates e-cigarettes and offers them to passers-by. The vapor hangs in the air during these demonstrations, and after living in a smoke-free world since the Smoke-Free Act of 2008, shoppers are confused by the kiosks and the products. The e-cigarette industry spent $20.8 million in advertising in 2012. That's up from $2.7 million in 2010, according to the New York Times. There are magazines, television ads using celebrities to attract users, and online sites that promote e-cigarettes. In 1970, Congress took their anti-smoking initiative one step further and passed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act, banning the advertising of cigarettes on television and radio starting on January 2, 1971. Do we not remember how far we have come? According to the USA Today, some studies indeed suggest that secondhand vapor poses health risks. Medical experts and the FDA have concerns about the nicotine and other chemicals that can be inhaled in the vapor of e-cigarettes. Makers of e-cigarettes maintain that their e-cigarettes are safer than cigarettes. If indeed that is true, then prove it. Masked as a prevention of sales to minors, this bill leaves too many other concerns out that I have highlighted today. No oversight, no regulation, no licensing of distributors, no prevention or cessation programs, no vapor-free policies for public spaces or workers, no label of ingredients for e-cigarettes, and creating a new division outside of tobacco products. What are we doing? If the health impacts have not been studied or long-term findings measured, how do we know if e-cigarettes are safe or not? While the FDA is currently studying e-cigarettes and is intending to propose regulations in the near future, long-term studies are needed to determine healthcare effects. And until it has been proven, we need to pause. After the years it took to learn the hazards of tobacco and smoking, to pass the Smoke-Free Air Act, adopting this legislation is a step backward. Let's not be fooled by this attempt to normalize vapor products and use the not available to minors approach as the reason to vote for something that will be creating loopholes in the future in our laws that can lead to future troubles. The passage of this bill not only leads to trouble in River City, but it leads to trouble for everyone, young and old. I will not be supporting this bill and urge my colleagues to vote no with me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Lady from Story, Representative Wessox Shell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. This is a complicated bill. I think anybody that reads it will find that there are a lot of issues that they may not understand immediately. I just want to make sure everybody here recognizes who's registered against the bill. The American Lung Association is registered against the bill. The American Heart Association is registered against the bill. The American Cancer Society is registered against the bill. And Cafe Iowa, which is clean air for everyone, registered against the bill. Iowa Public Health Association is registered against the bill. It's not about making a profit for any of these groups. And anybody who thinks it is needs to go talk to those advocates. This bill is clearly bad for your lungs, it's bad for your heart, and it will increase the incidence of cancer. 2/3 of cancers can be prevented, and we should be working towards that end, not in this direction. This is simply bad for your health. I won't be supporting it.
Chair recognizes Gentleman Marshall, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues of the House. I'm wondering if Representative Baltimore would yield for a few questions.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
You're in
Thank
order.
you. Thank you, Representative Baltimore. I wanted to revisit a couple of things that you had said about the bill to make sure that I was correct on this, that on the comments that you made about Representative Patty Ruff's amendment that would have banned the use of these products by school children. I think that you said that the schools already have the authority to disallow these products on their grounds. Am I accurately portraying what you said?
You are, and what I have been told by the lobbyist for the School Board Association, I believe that's who she's representing, is that 98% of the school districts out there have already banned these products from their grounds. So I think that that's pretty well established by now.
Okay, so again, maybe the same question phrased a little differently, and I apologize if I'm causing you to repeat yourself. As floor manager of this bill, you feel that school districts do have the authority to ban use of e-cigarettes and vapor products on their grounds?
I believe they do, yes.
Okay, and what other entities would have that authority as well?
I believe I have that authority to ban them from my property.
Okay, so I believe you have a law office, and so if you decided to not have them allowed in your law office, people would be able to not use them in your law office?
I believe that's correct. I can kind of control my own property on that.
And if I run a hotel or motel, the same applies. Any business, essentially, any private home, any private automobile, any company automobile, those can be banned by the owners, is your understanding?
As a general rule, yes.
Okay. Any other rule besides the general rule?
I don't know what else you're asking for.
Well, I'm just,
so.
in a general rule, kind of qualifies your answer, and I'm genuinely trying to find out if we have any thing that prohibits any entity from banning the use of these on their properties.
Well, I'm not going to try to speculate as to some type of constitutional right to do so, which may or may not supersede individual property rights, Representative. I mean, I could, without knowing exactly what you're referring, I guess I can't really sit here and speculate the entire universe of possibilities under which someone, a property owner, may or may not ban these products from their private property.
Okay.
I'm trying my best to answer the question as best I can, but I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at.
Okay, well, I'm just getting at if there is the authority. I mean, going back to the schools, there are a lot of 18-year-olds. I was one many, many years ago who turned 18 when I was a senior in high school, and you covered that the school indeed could prohibit people like me who turned 18 in their senior year from using these products on school grounds. And it also sounds like that you've said that that's your belief, that you could do this in your law office, and so that other businesses across the state could do this as well.
Representative, I guess I kind of liken this to alcohol. I think that schools are able to ban alcohol from their premises if they so desire, and I think that this building has banned alcohol from the property under certain circumstances. So,
yes.
I think that there are certainly things that can be done that private property owners have those rights to decide what is or is not going to be used or possessed on their property.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I have, Representative Baltimore, deals with the comments that you made with Representative Olson's amendment, that you feel very strongly that there is nothing in this bill that would allow the taking off of a tax on any current tobacco products sold in the state of Iowa. Is that correct?
I think what Representative Olson was trying to say was that there are products out there that are currently labeled as tobacco products.
Correct.
Under the existing law. I do not see anything that would change that definition for those products as opposed to these.
Okay, so all snus, snuff, pipe tobacco, all of that currently has a tax on it, that tax will remain in place with the passage of this bill.
Well, if those products, Representative, are not tobacco products, then we are unduly taxing them now. If they are tobacco products, then they would continue to be taxed even with this bill. So I don't think we can have it both ways. I don't think we can tax them now as a tobacco product and say that's how they are and that's what they're defined as, and then somehow say all of a sudden that now they're not tobacco products simply because we have dealt with alternative nicotine products in this bill under which those products do not fall. So the intention is not to change the definition of tobacco products. So those products are either tobacco products now and are being taxed appropriately and will be taxed appropriately after this bill, or they're not tobacco products and somebody is owed a refund.
All right. Thank you, Representative Baltimore, for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Gentleman Johnson, Representative Jacoby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, would Representative Baltimore yield?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
You're in order.
Thank you. I'm intrigued by your analogy of alcohol and what's legal and not legal for those under 18 and what the bill does. So help me with your analogy with alcohol. For a 20-year-old, is beer illegal?
Yes.
Thank you. Is wine illegal?
I believe so. If it
Is
contains
whiskey illegal?
if it contains alcohol, yes.
Okay, so what we're saying is all forms of that substance are illegal, but we're not saying the same. We're not being consistent and balanced when it comes to e-cigarettes. Help me with this, and this I'm going to go back to something that Majority Leader Uppmeyer said in opening comments for the session. In your opening, you said, we're not Washington, D.C. Well, I certainly hope not, but I got to tell you, if you're not having a fair discussion on amendments on the floor, then it's not truly bipartisan work. Now, those are just my comments, but help me, Representative Baltimore. An amendment was offered in committee. Will you tell the body what you called that amendment?
I called the amendment a backdoor effort to redefine these alternative nicotine products as smoking devices that I felt was an effort to bring them within the jurisdiction of the Smoke-Free Air Act.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of another word that you prominently used, and I don't know if you had read the amendment at that point or not. I'll leave that from your point of view. I'll ask you one more time, what word did you use for the amendment that we thought would make the bill better in committee?
I used multiple words, Representative, and I think if
I'll remind you. Thank you, Representative. And that's indicative of the bill and of the amendments, is avoiding a true discussion on what this bill does. The word used in committee was worthless. You're offering a worthless amendment. Now, Democrats aren't offering amendments that are worthless. We're offering amendments that we think make the bill better. Worthless. It's not a bipartisan word to me. This bill would mean my teen daughters, who we raise the best we can. They are absolutely fantastic kids. Teen daughters, West High School, Northwest Junior High. Part of the parenting that we do is no smoking ever. But what you have is a bill in front of you that says no smoking these things. But if it's strawberry And if you read the bill, and maybe that's where I'm struggling, I read the bill. This bill legalizes synthetic marijuana for kids under 18. Now, if we truly are going to have a bipartisan year, and I hope we do, I hope that means that we'll have a fair discussion in the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes Gentleman Boone, representing Baltimore, for closing remarks on House File 2109.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Representative Jacoby, no one could explain to me exactly what the purpose of that amendment in committee was or what it did. And when the proponent of the amendment could not explain it, the value of the amendment became apparent. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk specifically about what this bill does today and what it does not. This is a bill that is simply an effort to keep nicotine-creating nicotine products from minors. We have now had decades of smoking research and concern about smoking and the detrimental effects of that, and decades of research and studies that have shown the dangers of smoking cigarettes, as has been brought forth by the American Cancer Society and the American Lung Society and the American Association of Cancer Research and all of this. And the danger has always been focused upon lung cancer, and the lung cancer being caused by smoke and the carcinogens that are in smoke. And the concern about nicotine with regards to cigarettes, ladies and gentlemen, has been that the nicotine substance was the addictive hook that tobacco companies used to get people hooked on cigarettes so that they would continue to inhale the carcinogenic smoke, thereby enhancing and creating and causing lung cancer. These products, thanks to technological innovation, take the carcinogenic smoke out of the equation. So the concern about nicotine is much less because it does not cause one to become addicted to a cancer-causing smoke product. We acknowledge, I think, in this body that because nicotine may be addictive for some, that it's appropriate to keep it out of the hands of children. That's what this bill does. During the subcommittee on this bill, we had multiple opportunities, and we heard from multiple people associated with the various health organizations, the Iowa Public Health Association, the American Cancer Society. None of them brought forward any research to establish that the alternative nicotine products are cancer-causing or are deadly. So what we're trying to do here with a lot of this, despite the fact, and I don't remember which representative made the statement that this bill will increase cancer, I think that logic tells us that that is not true. To the extent that these alternative products will help adults not smoke the cancer-causing cigarettes, the carcinogenic smoke concerns, I think that according to the testimony that was given, within 10 years, the alternative products are projected to replace the cancer-causing cigarettes altogether. So I wholly look forward to the Food and Drug Administration doing their research. I think for us to sit here and get all worked up because of what may be a problem that certainly is not backed up by any research that has gone on. We've had decades not only of research opportunities for smoke, but also nicotine. And we've not seen those studies come forward that have shown that. So let's do the right thing today. Let's keep these out of the hands of our children. We've got an enforcement mechanism here that will regulate that, will restrict who can and can't sell these products and to whom they can be sold. And let's look forward to some additional research down the road that tells us whether or not we need to go further. I think that should be our guide based on research rather than on speculation and fear. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I move passage of House File 2109.
Gentleman from Boone moves the bill read for last time, placed on its passage. Are there objections? Chair hears none. The clerk will read.
House File 2109, a bill for an act relating to vapor products and alternative nicotine products and providing penalties. Be it enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Iowa.
Question now is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage vote aye. Those opposed vote no. The clerk will receive your vote. Lundby votes aye. Hine votes aye. Burns votes aye. Brandenburg votes aye. Kaufman votes aye. Stannerson votes aye. Jacoby votes no. Klein votes aye. Maxwell votes aye. Forrestal votes aye. Have you all now voted? Clerk, close machine, record your vote. House give attention, results of vote. Those voting aye 76, nay 22, absent not voting 2. The bill having received a constitutional majority is declared to pass the House. Are there objections to the title? Chair hears none, and the title is agreed to. Chair recognizes the lady from Cerro Gordo, Representative Upmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, please message to the Senate, House File 2151, excuse me, I think that's 2131, House File 2132, House File 2109, and please also recognize Representative Kester for House File 2175.
Are there objections to the messaging of House File 2131, 2132, and 2109? Chair hears none, so ordered. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, Representative Kester, for opening remarks on House File 2175.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House File 2175 is a bill that deals with the known topic of telemedicine abortion. It specifically prohibits any person from dispensing that medicine by telecommunications for the purpose of terminating a human pregnancy. The bill then allows, should there be an offense, the Board of Medicine to levy discipline. I support this bill for many reasons, primarily due to the unsafe practice that impacts the use of this technique for terminating pregnancies in our state. We were the first to allow, and we are an aggressive user of this method. Because it's unsafe, I want to offer additional information. First, I'd like to share with the body that my colleagues and I have strong respect for telemedicine, and so this bill is not about preventing telemedicine from advancing in our state. It has many proper applications in the medical field, and we want to see that continue. I want to see that continue. However, there are several factors that make this procedure unsafe. Let me share a few. FDA approves the medicine regimen used, but only for use by a doctor and for a pregnancy of 7 weeks or fewer. Iowa violates this by extending to 9 weeks the period of time in which we would terminate the pregnancy. There are many identified complications and adverse events by the thousands that FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, has identified that relate to this procedure. In our state, law requires a patient-doctor relationship. In this procedure, that is a clear concern to the Iowa Board of Medicine in terms of how the procedure is completed in the state of Iowa. Another clear concern are the qualifications of the health professionals sometimes used for the physical exam that is a requirement of the procedure. We violate the standard of care in Iowa. The procedure itself is unsafe. We bring it forward today in part for the reason that most Iowans agree that this procedure should be banned. Mr. Speaker, those are my opening remarks. Thank you.
Is there discussion? The chair recognizes the lady from Story, Representative Wessel-Krishel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. It's interesting in this bipartisan fashion that we're starting the year off. First night of debate in the Iowa House for this session, and what do we have? A bill that's limiting a woman's right to choose. A bill that's limiting a woman's access to health care. Doesn't sound very bipartisan to me. While you and I may disagree about the reasons a woman may choose to have an abortion, we can all agree that protecting a woman's health and safety at all times is important. This bill has nothing to do with safety. This bill has everything to do about ending abortions in Iowa, albeit a small portion of those abortions in Iowa. It has nothing to do with safety. We will hear in this debate tonight that adverse reactions to this procedure are extremely minimal compared to any other form of abortion or any other telemedicine procedure that takes place. It's probably the safest thing that's done over telemedicine. It allows for an early abortion, and it allows for the exact same procedures as are done in person when you see a physician. Somebody else does the exam, somebody else does the ultrasound, and the physician provides the medication in person as required by Iowa law. Here's an interesting statistic. 99% of telemed abortions done by medication are successful. 97% in person when the patient actually sees the physician inpatient. There have been no formal complaints to the Board of Medicine or to Planned Parenthood. There have been no serious complications, meaning there's been nothing life-threatening or life-altering. The number of abortions in this state since we started telemed abortions has decreased, gone down, and they've become safer. What I want for women in Iowa is choice and safety, and this bill offers neither. We may disagree about the reasons a woman may choose to have an abortion, but we have to agree that she needs to make her own health care decisions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we will have an interesting debate tonight.
Chair recognizes the lady from Blackhawk, Representative Gaitazovich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Kester yield to a few questions?
Will the gentleman yield? You are in order.
Thank you, Representative. I know you made some claims that it's unsafe, telemedicine is unsafe for a woman to use. I would be interested, as Representative Wessel-Krishel used some real statistics, where did you get this information from?
Federal Drug Administration would offer much of the information I would share. Also,
and what are the statistics on it? I mean, because I have a lot of research here, and I would be happy to share with you that that's just not accurate.
I will certainly be very interested in any and all of your research. In answer to your question, July of 2011 is the most recent FDA report on the safety of this regimen. They find 2,207 adverse events in the United States after women took this regimen. That includes 14 deaths and other complications.
And are you aware of, back in the day, how many women used to die from lack of available resources when it comes to their health care?
I'm not aware of statistics on that. I'm very impressed with the advance of medicine.
Okay, thank you. The fact is that telemedicine is practiced in much of the medical field. What we're seeing today is just a target on women's health care choices, once again. For example, I'll give you some of the examples where it's widely used. Iowa lags in a number of psychologists available, and telemedicine in rural Iowa has been used to deliver much needed and life-changing medical services to those in need of mental health services. According to U.S. Health and Human Services Healthcare Resources and Services Administration, nearly 80 million Americans live in mental health professional shortage areas, and they're looking at expanding this scope of medicine. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs is another leader in telemedicine and estimates that 820,000 veterans, or about 15% of the veteran population, will be served through telemedicine as well. So why are we debating this bill today? Supporters of banning telemedicine from women's reproductive health care choices are full of false claims, as I have not been able to find evidence that this health care option threatens women's health. Data shows that the number of abortions in Iowa continue to fall. We all want to reduce the number of unintended pregnancies, and allowing women to have health care access to safe and scientifically proven medical options is a key to that. This bill before us today, and the bills I've seen in this chamber the past few years, will take women's health care decades back and endanger the lives of women. We don't need to go back to the days when thousands of women died seeking health care services. I hope we won't see any more of these bills targeting women's health care this session. This GOP obsession with women's health care choices needs to stop. Instead, let's focus on ensuring that a woman has the resources and health care options available to make the best and safest decision for her and her family. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pocahontas, Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we are often called upon to make many decisions down here, personal decisions, moral decisions. And I just wanted to share today that for me personally, this is one of the toughest moral decisions that I've had to struggle with. We have legislation before us which may save the lives of some persons, but as someone who believes that it is our duty, it is our obligation to stand up and defend all innocent life, regardless of age or stage of biological development, I simply cannot support this bill. This bill violates the very stated purposes of our Declaration of Independence. It violates the United States Constitution and the 5th and 14th Amendments. It does not provide equal protection. Equal protection isn't requested. Equal protection is demanded. So for my voting for this bill, I would be in direct violation of the United States Constitution and the Iowa Constitution under the rights of persons. For we certainly cannot enjoy liberty if our life is snuffed out at an early age, if there's any disruption of our biological development. Many of the colleagues in my caucus, I've had this discussion with them many times. Sometimes they get rather contentious. And I know that on our side of the aisle that this is an issue that continues to be debated, not only in the state houses, but out in Washington, D.C. Do we continue with some incremental legislation, or do we do the right thing and simply stand up and do what is right? That question will not be settled here today. But I will continue to fight for the equal protection of all innocent life. I will fight for those children who have committed no crime and yet face the death penalty. Mr. Speaker, we can do better than this. Mr. Speaker, I think it's demanded that we must do better than this. Thank you.
Chair recognizes General Polk, Representative Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Kester yield?
Will the gentleman yield? Yes, you're in order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Kester. You had mentioned that the basis for this bill is for safety reasons, and you base that safety on an FDA report. Is that correct?
Among other, yes.
Okay. That FDA report, when was that done, and what was that based on?
July 2011 is the most recent data I could find on this medicine and this procedure, and it was based on thousands of procedures in our country using that medicine.
The original, you had mentioned that the FDA standards were that there be 3 visits and 600 milligrams and that type of thing. When was that? When were those standards set?
Representative Hunter, in all due respect, I made no reference to 3 visits about anything. I'm not sure.
I believe you did. If not here, then in subcommittee. 3 visits to the doctor?
No, sir.
Okay. You had mentioned that in your FDA report, you had mentioned thousands of people dying, or you had referenced people. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, there were thousands of adverse effects. There were 14 persons in founded cases from this medical procedure that died in the United States as of July of 2011.
Okay, what did that FDA report actually say about those deaths?
I'd be happy to answer that. They did define cause of death and each of the 14 to fall under specific categories. That's not at the tip of my tongue, but I shall find it.
Actually, in the government, while you're looking, the Government Accountability Office, Food and Drug Administration, approval and oversight of the drug Miliprex that you referenced, he did reference deaths, but the FDA investigations into these deaths, however, found no evidence of a causal relationship between Miliprex and the infections or the deaths. So yes, they did investigate deaths, but they found no causal effects between RU-486 and those deaths. And I'd be happy to share that report with you if you'd like, but I thought maybe you had it on your desk since you were talking about it.
I'm certainly interested in that report.
I'd be more than happy to show that to you, because it definitely says there was no causal effects. And you mentioned the thousands of side effects to using this drug. How many does it, in your notes there, does it show how many actual women use the medication?
No.
In actuality, 1.52 million women have used medication abortions since it became legal in 2000. And those figures that you stated actually represent a 0.28% adverse reaction rate. That's far less than aspirin, which is at 6.4%, Clarinex at 10%, or Advair at 28%. And yet I see nothing in this bill to protect the women of Iowa or the people of Iowa, to regulate or do anything about those drugs. Now, in your efforts to protect the women of Iowa, I see that you're only dealing with telemedicine. Is that correct?
Yes.
If this drug is actually causing the effects that you claim, and you want to protect the women of Iowa, why aren't you just going out on an outright ban of it? That seems to me, if what you say is true, and I dispute what you're saying is true, but if what you're saying is true and you do want to protect the women of Iowa, why not an outright ban?
In separate bill, I would consider joining you in a consideration of that, but to your point, the reason for this is this particular procedure violates several aspects of standard of care in Iowa code and according to the Iowa Board of Medicine, where that would not be true across the board in the use of the medicine that you refer to.
Okay, and bringing that up, you had mentioned that in your opening statements that unqualified people were doing the examinations. Where and when did that happen?
The testimony to the Iowa Board of Medicine included reference from actual witnesses that CMAs were used to do the physical exam, and the law requires doctors.
Where and when did that happen?
The report, the minutes of the report do not reflect what clinics, what dates this occurred, but the testimony is not limited to the Iowa Board of Medicine minutes of August of this past year, 2013. The use of CMAs, certainly nurse practitioners, nurses, and other health professionals has been questioned, in fact, by each and every member of the Iowa Board of Medicine, whether they voted for the ban or not. Every one of them raised concerns on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Representative Kessler. Thank you. Appreciate your answers, what little they were. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I wish I could remember the exact movie, but there was a movie years ago, I think it was by the Coen brothers, that started out, this movie is true, only the facts are made up. This bill reminds me so much of that statement because this bill is one of those let's forget about the facts bill. Or better yet, this bill is a bill where the facts don't even exist. Because this bill has nothing to do with patient safety. In fact, if this bill passes, rural, low-income people will be at greater risk than they are now. No, there's only one reason for this bill. This bill is nothing more than another round of the continuous attack that Republicans have made against women and women's rights. And quite frankly, it's time for that to stop. Contrary to what we've heard in committee meetings and in opening statements today, American women are not second-class citizens. There's actually been something that's been going on for the last couple of years called the women's rights movement. And I'm not kidding about that. You can look it up. It's in the dictionaries. It's there. And it's a good thing. Whether it's equal pay for equal work.
State your point.
Mr. Speaker, could we please speak to the bill?
Your point is well taken. That's not the subject matter of the bill. Confine your remarks to the bill. Representative Hunter, please.
Okay, because actually I think it is subject to the bill that this bill is treating women as second-class citizens. But right now we're not even letting women choose their own reproductive health care. Because I believe that this bill and others like them are actually subjugating women. So let's do something novel. Let's look at the facts for a second. The procedure used in telemedicine medication abortions is exactly the same as in an in-person procedure. Contrary to Representative Kester's claims of some unnamed person doing some procedure at some unnamed location at some unnamed time, the patient receives the same exam from a licensed person. They receive the same tests, the same education, and the same ultrasound that they would be given on an in-person visit. And the medication is always provided.
Representative Hunter, your time has expired. Chair recognizes the lady from Johnson, Representative Masher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, telehealth is safe, effective. It's a delivery system that expands access to health care for a woman who would otherwise have to travel a long distance to see a clinician. Representative Kester, I don't know what studies you're looking at, but I will send one on to the body that states abortion via telemedicine are safe, effective, and it's an Iowa study that is cited. And it is done by the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. 94% of the women who chose telemedicine reported that they were very satisfied with the procedure, and researchers found that the women who received virtual counseling had no more complications than those who had office visits. And this again is according to the new report published in the latest edition of the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. I think they're kind of experts in their field and they should know. It's a study that I will send to you. I think our study shows that the telemedicine model is being provided quite safely in Iowa, with identical outcomes as face-to-face visits. The study's lead author, Dr. Daniel Grossman, an assistant clinical professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of California in San Francisco, and a senior associate with IBIS Reproductive Health, a nonprofit research organization based in California. So I will send that on to you because I think it's important that we get the facts right. The same medical protocols used when delivering medication abortion in person are used for delivering medication abortion via telehealth delivery. The patient receives the same medical attention and high-quality care. There's been no factual information or evidence presented to indicate that this delivery system is unsafe. The bottom line is this bill will not reduce abortions. Representative Wessel-Krishel already told the body that abortions are on the decline in Iowa. It has to do with the fact that we're providing good family planning to families across the state. We're providing them with birth control means so that they can plan those pregnancies. This bill only makes it more difficult for women to access safe and legal care. Even if you disagree with a woman's decision to end a pregnancy, I understand that. I really do. We can all agree that a woman should have access to safe care. Safe care. This would eliminate that access for many Iowa women. Representative Uppmeyer, Speaker Paulson, at the beginning of the year, you stated this year would be different, that we would not waste our time and taxpayers' dollars debating social issues like abortion. Instead, we would work together and pass bipartisan legislation. Please, please honor that promise. Stop attacking women. The losers on this bill, rural Iowans. Rural Iowans. The losers on this bill, low-income Iowans who have a difficult time getting to a center where they can receive good quality health care. So I'm sorry today that we are wasting taxpayer dollars and our time on a bill that is going nowhere. You know this will never, ever be debated in the Senate. We should be working to make sure all women in this state have access to quality, safe health care, no matter where they live. I'll be a no vote. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the lady from Benton, Representative Pettengill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I really appreciate the Board of Medicine bringing forward rules on this last summer, and they really stepped up to set a standard of practice for webcam abortions by saying that a doctor had to be present when the examination took place, so a person who was qualified to do an examination did it, and also requiring that a 14-day follow-up to make sure that all the pieces of the baby were gone, because it can cause infection. When we are talking about the FDA protocol, the FDA requires that the doctors present at the first examination, and I think the second visit, the FDA protocol says on the third day when the second medicine is delivered. The first medicine separates the baby from the uterine lining, and the second medicine that's delivered on the third day that the doctor's supposed to be present also is what causes the bleeding and the shedding of the baby out of the uterus. So I think that's where Representative Hunter was talking about 3 visits, because the FDA protocol requires 3 visits. The first day, the third day, and then the 14th day to make sure that all of the pieces of the baby are gone. It was very courageous of the Board of Medicine to start the process of coming up with the standard procedures that should be done on this, and it was in no way against the health of women, but for the health of women. If you are going against what the FDA says when you're delivering these medicines, for instance, the first medicine is a $90 pill, and the FDA says that there should be 3 of those, what is being given to women in Iowa is 1. And then the second pill is supposed to be 2, and they're being given 4. So there are differences to what the FDA and the manufacturer of these medicines allow and not suggest, but require, and it's not happening. So I believe that that is for the health of women. Anyway, today the legislature is weighing in on what we think the majority of Iowans are wanting to protect women and make sure that there are safeguards in place for this type of procedure. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the lady from Polk, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. From 1974 to 1977, I was a medical social worker at Broadlawns Hospital. One of my jobs was to counsel the 6 girls and women who came to Broadlawns each week to have an abortion. This was part of the OB-GYN practicums or residency, because the same process is used on miscarriages. And so I would explain the procedure. I'd explore why they decided on that option. I'd sometimes stay with them during the procedure, and I always followed up with them. None of those girls and women made their decisions lightly. Some changed their minds. but all of them were very capable of making their own decision. Later on in my career, I worked with rape and incest victims for 30 years. Some of them got pregnant as a result of the rape. Women can get pregnant from a rape at the same rate as a woman gets pregnant from consensual sex. I hesitate because I hesitate comparing consensual sex and rape. Saying that comparing rape to sex is like hitting me over the head with a iron skillet and calling it cooking. But that is a comparison I can make. Will Representative Kester yield?
Will the gentleman yield? You're in order.
Representative Kester, have you ever gone to a physician who gave you medicine on the day of your appointment?
Yes.
And when the doctor gave you that prescription, was she in the room?
When I was handed the script, yes, not when I took it.
And who actually handed you the sample or the pill that you would take before you got your script?
Generally, I was at the pharmacist an hour or so later and not even in the doctor's office at that moment.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Representative Kester. Most of us go to the doctor, and if we're going to get something in the doctor's office, the doctor says, thank you, and the nurse will be right in. I attended the hearings of the current medical board, and I read the report of the previous board. The first board did an extensive investigation, and their study found no danger in the procedure. Like other uses for telemedicine, this use for reproduction makes healthcare accessible, especially in rural areas. At the second set of meetings with a newly appointed board, there was no new investigation. I heard testimony from people who were against abortion. There were no complaints from anybody in the public about treatment or complications after their abortion. And there was actually no discussion among the board members. They just heard the testimony and then made their decision. Clearly, they were using an administrative procedure to stop access to a legal medical procedure. This bill is an assault on women. It's an assault on their access to medical care. It's an assault on their right to choose from all the medical options available. It's an assault and an insult to their intelligence. It's an assault on a woman's ability to make her own thoughtful decisions about her body and her pregnancy. When a woman is a rape victim, she has lost control of her life. Denying her the options available to her when she is pregnant from that rape, from that crime, is another violation of her right to self-control. This is a bad bill, supported by those who think they will never have to make this decision. Well, my mom and dad never thought they would have to make this decision. But in 1962, my mom and dad got pregnant for the 9th time, and my Catholic mother and Catholic father went to my mother's Catholic doctor, who told her that either she or the baby would die. That Catholic doctor offered my mother a D&C, which is what people called termination of pregnancy at that time. My mom and dad decided it was most important that she survive to raise her 5 children. I was the oldest. I was 12, and my baby brother was 3. I was thankful that my mom would still be there to raise me and love me, and all my other brothers and sisters too. And I will be voting no on this bill. Thank you, Mr.
Chair recognizes the lady from Story, Representative Heddens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good evening, good afternoon, I guess still, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I am wondering if Representative Kester would yield to a few questions.
Will the gentleman yield? You are in order.
Thank you. Representative Kester, I just have some questions in regards to the discipline procedures. Could you talk to me a little bit about that if a doctor dispenses the medication to a woman, what are the discipline that physician could encounter?
The bill would defer the discourse of judgment on that to the Iowa Board of Medicine in the case of a doctor, but to the licensing board. And so I would speak to the procedures, if you wish, that the Iowa Board of Medicine would follow.
That would be great.
Okay, I'll proceed. The disciplinary hearings are subject to certain sections and rule that there would be not less than 6 members, of whom at least 3 would be board members of the Board of Medicine. And following its rules, and I can quote sections, I believe the punchline to get to the essence of how they make a decision would be this. If the majority of the members of the board vote in favor of finding the licensee guilty of an act or offense as specified in that section and as per this law that would be thereby included, they have 4 options. The first of those would be to suspend the license. The second would be to revoke the license. The third would be to suspend imposition of judgment and penalty. And last would be to impose both.
Okay, now the bill says that you shall be subject to the maximum discipline applicable. So my question is revoking a license, suspending a license, which is the maximum?
The maximum is determined by the licensing board according to their procedures. It is quite common that the board evaluates several measures of how many prior complaints, what other kinds of factors weigh in to the severity.
But the bill representative says they shall not be dispensed, and then they shall be subject to the maximum discipline applicable. So I'm just trying to figure out, is revoking a license the maximum, or is suspending a license the maximum? Because to me, it sounds like if I took away your medical license, that's a maximum penalty. If I just revoked it, it's not the maximum, but if I suspended it, it's not the maximum, but revoking it, that's the maximum, and it's just for dispensing. Correct? I mean, that's how I'm reading the bill. It says, shall not cause to be dispensed and shall be subject to the maximum discipline applicable. Not may, shall.
I'll offer 2 very brief responses. First, I would concur and agree that revocation is a far more severe response than would be suspension. But reading the bill verbatim, I do not interpret it the way you do. I think it's very clear that the discipline procedures, if found in violation by that board, shall be subject to the maximum discipline applicable by the professional licensing board. They have clear rule and regulation about how and when they jump from the 4 that I almost completed in terms of the kinds of options that they have. It is not incumbent upon the board to bypass their applicable procedures regarding the offense. It does not mean revocation of the license in the first ever complaint of any nature, be it this or other, that comes before the Iowa Board of Medicine.
But they shall not dispense it, and they shall be subject to the maximum. I just want to make sure that we're clear on those 2 areas. So if I saw the physician in person and he distributed me the medication, he would not be subject to this, correct? Because it's only if it shall dispense via telecommunication technology or webcam.
I agree.
Okay, so we got two different standards then.
I agree.
Okay. That gives me some pause for concern there that we're right away going to jump to, in my opinion, revoking a physician's license in this particular instance. Thank you, Representative Kester, for answering my questions there. Ladies and gentlemen, I have some severe concerns in this entire piece of legislation, but right away this legislation states that we shall revoke a physician's license for dispensing the medication to the maximum extent. I think that is pretty clearly stated. There is no wiggle room there. It's not a may, it is a shall. And my only conclusion is that we are continuing to limit access to women who are seeking broader health care services, and I'll be a no on the bill.
Chair recognizes the lady from Johnson, Representative Stutzman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I want to address the concerns I have about this bill and that it puts barriers in place for women who live in rural areas and their ability to access health care services to terminate a pregnancy through telemedicine, a medical procedure that I find in my investigation is safe. The bill unduly targets rural women who in many cases are low income. If this bill passes, it will mean that a woman must travel many miles to receive these medical services. This means a cost in transportation, having to fill the car with gas, and we all know what a tank of gas costs these days, taking time off from work, and in some cases having to find childcare. All costs that are a burden to low-income women just to access women's health care services. We talk in Iowa about providing accessibility to services regardless of where you live. That was what mental health care reform was all about. No matter where you live, you could access the same kind of level of care and services for persons with disabilities. I believe in this concept. There should be no difference in where you live in Iowa in your ability to receive good services, whether it's for children with disabilities or good medical care. This bill goes against this idea. Only in certain locations can you access health care services. An unfortunate set of circumstances for those people who live in rural areas, and another reason for people to move out of rural areas. I will be a no vote on this bill.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marshall, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, distinguished colleagues and Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if Representative Kester would yield to a few questions.
Will the gentleman yield? You are in order.
Thank you, Representative Kester. I was intrigued with the communication between you and Representative Hiddens about licensure boards, and in part, my curiosity was piqued because I've served on a licensure board, and I would start with the question if you have served on a licensure board.
No.
Okay. And if I understand what you're saying is that this language that Representative Hiddens has talked about, that the maximum penalty would be implemented, that's not the case. You're saying that the board still has the broad array of disciplinary actions that are afforded to it under current law?
Yes, and under current rule, Section 148, 2.A, and Chapters 17 and A and 21 are specifically relevant to a disciplinary hearing that would, of course, be open to the public in the case of that licensing board.
Okay, so you're saying that I'm trying to figure out why the language is in the bill that says that the board shall impose the maximum sanction if you're saying that they have the whole latitude, that I'm not aware of any other legislation that speaks to this issue other than giving the boards the latitude to discipline when someone violates the law. Can you comment on that, on why this language is there and why you feel that it does not restrict the board's right or it does not restrict their right to implement any discipline that they feel is appropriate in the situation?
Yes, I'd offer two inputs. First, the a related but different bill last year, and the origin of this bill, House File 2078, that is not before us because it was amended, dealt with this topic. And the amendment approved in committee eliminated the criminal penalty of a simple misdemeanor in favor of moving to the licensing board approach. And so that's germane to what's the origin and how did we get to this point with a licensing board. Regarding the intent of still respecting the severity of violation of law, should this become law, that the licensing board would thereby look at the unsafe procedure as they have already defined it, and then determine the proper result. They have the capacity to fine, they have the capacity to suspend or revoke a license, and the bill clearly states that they would follow their applicable professional licensing board regs to determine that, but take it to the max. It would be a severe offense to Iowans.
Tell me, Representative Custer, why the reference to shall impose the maximum is in the bill.
To give emphasis that this is a, should this bill become law, that this is a strong offense to Iowans and a clear message to the licensing board.
Okay, and so, but it really wouldn't be that if they could impose any sanction that they felt was appropriate. Is that true?
Well, they couldn't impose any sanction that they might kind of sort of maybe think would be appropriate. They would have to follow rule, and thereby, if there were not reason to suspend, they would go to a maximum penalty. It is, as I previously mentioned, it is far more common for the Board of Medicine to look at an initial complaint of any nature and not move to revocation by way of their own policy, procedure, and history.
Representative Kester, would you say that the maximum penalty that the medical board could impose on a physician would be revocation of their license to practice medicine for the remainder of that physician's life?
No. I would add that it would certainly be almost irrelevant to add to that the maximum civil penalty that they find. Currently, that dollar amount is a $10,000 limit, but I should admit to you that that could be added to the revocation of the license.
Representative Kester, what would be, in your opinion, the maximum revocation or the maximum penalty that the Iowa Board of Medicine could impose on a physician?
After following their procedures as per regs and rules and code, the maximum penalty that could be imposed after a violation of law, follows complaint, after following their other procedures, the next and fullest step maximum would be twofold: revocation of the license, maximum
for lifetime.
Yes.
Yes.
In
okay.
Iowa.
And there would be addition to that. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no problem, sir. The other piece would be the civil penalty of a $10,000 fine.
All right. Thank you, Representative Kester. Ladies and gentlemen of the body, I wholeheartedly agree with Representative Hedden's interpretation of this and very much respectfully disagree with the answers given by the floor manager. As someone who has served on a licensure board here in the state of Iowa, we have been given, members of the board, a latitude regarding what punishments are placed on people who violate the rules of the profession and the laws of the state of Iowa. This law, or this bill before us, does not give that. Representative Kester gave the idea that doing this through the licensure board would be less of a penalty than having it go through criminal sanctions. I'm not sure that removal of a physician's license for lifetime is a lesser penalty than what we would have under criminal law with this. I encourage the body to rethink their vote on this bill and to vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Woodbury, Representative Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Iowa House. Would Representative Kester yield to a few questions?
Will the gentleman yield?
Of course.
You are in order.
Representative, we had a discussion in the Human Resources Committee on this bill, and you agreed that the topic of this bill is the exact same topic of the rules that were implemented by the Board of Medicine last year. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. I respectfully spoke with frequency that I did not agree it was exactly the same as that was before the Iowa Board of Medicine.
The words are not exactly the same, but the intent is the same, that the board's rules require an in-person examination, and this would ban anything but an in-person examination. So it's exactly the same conduct that's being regulated by the board's rules as well as this bill, correct?
Again, not correct. The Board of Medicine would respond currently in regs only to a complaint. In the case of legislation, the notion would start with the effect of law, not the allegation or complaint raised by some Iowan and logged there. So there is a significant difference at the beginning, but I certainly want to cooperate with the concept that the main result of this bill would be to prohibit this unsafe procedure.
So you agree that both the board rule and this legislation would ban a medical procedure that would provide a medication for abortion through telecommunications?
Yes.
So that's the same topic?
That part of the bill and of the rule considered by the Iowa Board of Medicine are indeed identical.
And you continually refer to needing to protect the safety of women's health in Iowa. Can you tell me the number of women in Iowa who have registered a complaint anywhere that there were any complications as a result of this procedure anywhere in the state of Iowa?
The registration of complaint, as was presented by the minority party and committee, was by definition that from the abortion clinic, which utilizes a definition of a adverse effect as a failure to abort the baby, as opposed to complications for the mother, the patient that has left the clinic long after.
I'm not here to debate what the adverse effect was. I want to know if there's been any complications or complaint by any woman in the state of Iowa anywhere about this procedure.
Yes, there are multiple testimonies by women
that underwent the procedure. I'm not talking about people who testified in front of the board about not liking the procedure, but people who actually underwent this procedure. They registered a complaint that impacted negatively their health or safety.
Good clarification. That prevents me heading where I was going. The notion of direct from the women would be in the presence of their doctor at the ER. We can cite Des Moines Register articles that quote doctor and patient in terms of significant complications from this telemedicine. Yes.
So you're referring to some anecdotal newspaper reports, but no actual complaints with the Board of Medicine?
The testimony in those articles by both the doctor and the patient I consider credible. That's all I have to offer.
So no actual complaints, correct?
Well, I want to repeat that the complaints that we were dealing with in committee specifically deal with complaints back to a place that is not available for the woman after the abortion to go back and seek help or to file a complaint. So that complaint or that process, as would be the advice of the abortion clinic, would be to go to an ER. From that source, I do have evidence.
And where is that evidence?
Des Moines Register, Iowa Board of Medicine, in terms of testimony that was presented to them.
And there was no testimony by any patient in front of the board who complained about the procedure. Is that correct?
I believe that to be correct. I also believe it to be impossible, according to HIPAA rules and laws, to pursue that kind of testimony at a later date.
And have you researched more into the lawsuit that I talked to you about in the committee meeting last week in Human Resources?
Somewhat, yes, thank you.
And so you're familiar that there's currently a lawsuit pending on this topic, and there's already been an initial decision by a judge. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes, in fact, I believe there have been multiple decisions at different levels of the court.
And I'm talking about the one specifically against the Iowa Board of Medicine in the state of Iowa by an Iowa judge. You're aware of that case?
Yes.
And it is attacking this type of ban as both a violation of the board's process and also as a violation of the Iowa and federal constitutions. Is that right?
Those are the allegations in the lawsuit that is still pending.
And I would just read from the court's decision from November 5th of 2013. It says that the Board of Medicine has not produced any evidence whatsoever that telemedicine abortions are unsafe or negatively impact patient health. Wouldn't you agree that the Board of Medicine would be the best source of being able to produce such evidence in a court case? It just calls for a yes or a no, sir. Just a yes or a no, sir.
No, I'm happy to defend.
So you don't think the Board of Medicine is the best source of determining when there's an unsafe procedure? Thank you.
Those are two separate questions.
The court also said that this ban would unduly interfere with relationships between physicians who provide telemedicine abortions and their patients, and could force women to consider having a surgical abortion or even forgo having an abortion altogether. With these results of this recent court decision, I think we're moving forward legislation today that is unconstitutional. Representative Shaw even agreed that it violated equal protection. I think we should step back, wait for the court to make a ruling in this, decide what is and is not constitutional before we plunge forward into this bill that will likely be attacked as unconstitutional and end up in the courts. So for those reasons, I would urge you to vote no today.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Dubuque, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if I get to about 5 or 6 minutes, would you interrupt just to let me know so I don't go over my 10-minute time limit and have to rise a second time? Would the gentleman from Polk, Representative Kester, yield to a few questions?
The gentleman yield. You are in order.
Thank you, Representative Kester. I do want to go over a few things with you about the bill, and I guess the first one I want to talk to you about that Representative Anderson brought up. There's no exceptions for a woman if she is raped or it might be a case of incest. There's no exceptions for a woman that comes and seeks to use telemedicine to terminate the pregnancy. There is no exception for that in this bill, correct? It's all telemedicine for the purposes of terminating a pregnancy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And as I remember we discussed it in committee, we were still talking the first 9 weeks, correct?
Yes, that is the practice in Iowa, contrary to what's perceived as safe by the FDA.
Okay, and their contention is 7 weeks, correct? Not 9 weeks.
Exactly right.
The bill does not address moving it then from 9 weeks to 7 weeks. This is just a ban then.
That's correct.
So when you talk about what is proposed would be safe, instead of just going with the safe portion of it, moving from 9 weeks to 7 weeks, we're going to just do a complete ban so that they can't use this at all, correct?
The facts relate to several matters, both in the Iowa Board of Medicine case and in this law, that would be one of the many violations of standard of care. That one alone would have warranted.
But Representative Kester, you did state that that was a safety issue, that it should be 7 weeks. The bill, as it's printed, just does a ban.
Yes, because that is one of many factors that will go into the reason to prohibit this unsafe.
Now, I have a couple more questions, or several more questions, but now this talks about, and I picked this up when you were discussing it with Representative Heddens, and I want to ask this specific question. What does this do to stop an out-of-state provider from providing telemedicine? Because all we can do is regulate Iowa doctors, and we currently have telemedicine from the Mayo Clinic in Rochester that provides services to numerous different medical facilities within the state. What would stop telemedicine from occurring if it's done out of state? Because the only thing you regulate in here is the physician, correct?
Well, the stoppage to go to other states is in part an existing ban.
Kester, the first part of the question is, what do you do? The only penalties in here goes towards the physician, correct?
I'm ready to answer your question,
Yes,
and
go
that part
ahead.
is correct.
Okay.
The stoppage for an Iowan to go to other states is also clear. Among the many states that already have a ban on this method include 4 of the states that immediately border Iowa. So that is a direct answer to your question.
But for the remaining states that surround Iowa, a physician could do telemedicine procedures that we ban because they're out of state and we can't regulate them, correct?
I totally agree.
Thank you. The next question I have is, and it goes back to what Representative Dawson was talking about, and that has to do with, did the Board of Medical Examiners, and this is a very specific question, did the Board of Medical Examiners ever discipline a provider, whether it be a physician, whether it be a hospital or a clinic, for this procedure?
I have not researched minutes of their meetings or of their past action of this nature to have a valid answer to your good question.
Okay. And then I just want to go through this. I know we went through it in committee, but I have the procedure here in front of me. And I have how it's done for the purposes of seeing a physician versus it being done through a HIPAA-approved secured video conferencing line. The first step was the woman considers the termination of her pregnancy, and she undergoes an ultrasound to determine the gestation. That's done on the telemedicine as well. Is that correct?
That's done in the clinic before the doctor, perhaps some great distance away, interacts with his or her patient.
But he does get a copy of that ultrasound so that he can determine that.
Yes,
correct?
that I believe to be standard practice at every clinic in Iowa that practices this procedure.
And a woman's allowed to view the ultrasound, and if they want to, they can even take a picture of it, correct?
Yes.
The next step is the woman takes a great length with a trained counselor or some form of provider to review her options, becoming an parent. They also are given the option of adoption as well as the termination of the pregnancy. And she is given factual and medically accurate information about what the procedures and the options are, correct?
I agree.
Okay.
Representative Murphy.
5 minutes? So I got 5 to go? Thank you. If a woman decides to terminate the pregnancy, she then meets with the physician or via two-way video that is HIPAA-approved secured line, correct?
Yes.
Then a staff member sits down with the woman, provides support and care, correct?
Yes.
The doctor reviews the client's medical history, the ultrasound, and lab results before they ever attempt to perform this procedure, correct?
Yes.
Then they make the decision of to review the medication regimen. They then ask questions. They verify that she is confident in her decision before they proceed.
Yes.
Okay. And then the physician administers the medication. And in the case of a teleconference, it's from a remote site, but he hits a button and it pops out of a drawer, and the woman then takes that medication, correct?
Yes.
Then the next step is, after she receives the drug, she then takes it, and she is given instructions to take at home within 24 to 48 hours with the additional medication, correct?
Yes.
And then the woman receives information about the contact information about the physician, medical staff, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so if there's any complications, correct?
That should happen every time. That
Yes.
is the procedure.
And then there's a follow-up with the woman that's scheduled within 2 weeks.
Yes.
And then the medication is, well, that's the whole procedure. Thank you, Representative Kester. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, the reason I wanted to walk through this is I wanted to explain to you and the floor manager, which he understood, that we have a very long process and an actual process that we take for the purposes of women making this medical decision. And we're talking about women that may be hundreds of miles away from a provider. But this bill has no exceptions for rape or incest. A woman then may have to go hundreds of miles, and if it's too late because they can't get an appointment or get a procedure or get the time off work to take that trip, they may have to do a surgical procedure, which may be more harm, create more of an opportunity for infections, and create more of a hardship for the patient. As he mentioned, he's using medical data that says it should be done in the first 7 weeks versus 9 weeks. But nowhere in the bill does it say we want to fix it for the safety of the first to move it up to the first 7. We're just banning it outright. The other part that you cannot address with this bill is you can have a provider from outside the state of Iowa perform these procedures. So everything we're doing here today could be null and void. And one doctor from a surrounding state could be providing health care to people as far as 350 miles away. I prefer Iowa physicians making those decisions and being within 50 to 100 miles away versus somebody that they don't know from 350 miles away. And as I mentioned, we've heard that this is unsafe, yet no provider, no hospital, no clinic has had an action taken against it. But we're doing this bill today. I think we need to think about this. Folks, women have very tough medical decisions to make. And as I mentioned in committee, I have a wife and I have a daughter. If they have a medical decision, I hope they would come and discuss it with me. But they shouldn't be required to. They should, and if they make a decision about what they want to do with their health care, it should be their decision. In committee, I talked about the fact that if I'm diagnosed or I notice a lump on my waistline tonight, I don't have to talk to my wife. I can make that decision without talking to anybody. And yet what we're doing here today is not trying to make it safer. We're just trying to deny health care to women in the first 9 weeks and make it more difficult for them to access that health care.
Representative Murphy, your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marion, Representative Hartsell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Kester yield to a couple of questions?
Will the gentleman yield? You are in order.
Thank you, sir. Representative Kester, I've heard you describe the risks associated in this procedure to the woman that receives this medication. One thing I have yet to hear is regarding the unborn person in the mother's womb. Would you happen to know what the survival rate is of the unborn person in the womb?
There is a survival rate after the medications. I believe it to be 0 in-state and nationally after follow-up care is provided to the mother.
Oh, okay, so then 0% survival rate for the unborn person in the womb. So with a 0% survival rate, then would you agree with me that this procedure would be very unsafe for the person in the womb?
Yes, that's batting 1,000, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, sir. I sure appreciate that. Well, given that this procedure poses some very serious risks to the expectant mother, and given that it's certain destruction for the person that's in the womb, I would like to save all persons, but at this point I want to save as many as we can, so I will be voting for this bill, and I'll be asking my colleagues here in the House to vote with me. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, Representative Hunter, for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize for a second time. But I thought it should be said, and of course this is in my opinion, that before we make a bill a law, that we shouldn't be dealing in unnamed innuendo. We should actually be dealing in facts. And when we cite reports that are being used as a basis of a bill, it's my opinion that you should actually read the end of the report and look at the conclusion that was made. That should also be the basis of a bill. Neither one of those cases have been used in the promotion of House File 2175. I also believe that you should actually use facts when you're promoting a bill. That unfortunately has not been used today, or in committee or in subcommittee. So let's look at a couple of the facts. It is a fact that telemedicine abortions are safe. Telemedicine abortions are using the same examinations, the same education, the same ultrasounds as you use in person. And the RU-486 is also given by a trained physician. The same as an in-person visit. The only difference is that instead of handing it directly to the patient, it's put through a drawer. It's also a fact that RU-486 has been tested extensively and is used safely and effectively worldwide since 1981, and in the United States since 2000. And more than 1.5 million women have used RU-486 since 2000. It's also a fact that the rate of adverse effect for RU-486 is extremely low, at 0.28%. That compares with aspirin at 6.4%, Advair at 27%, Wellbutrin at 22.3%, and Xanax with an adverse reaction rate of 13.9%. It is also a fact that in order to, quote unquote, protect the safety of women in the state of Iowa, we are not extending this, quote unquote, unsafe procedure to in-person uses of RU-486. Because evidently we don't care about the safety of those women. So women get the same exam as in person. The medicine is safe. You're not extending this to any place else but telemedicine medicine or telemedicine abortions. So what else is there? Oh yeah, it was mentioned before that women need to take time and think about what they're doing. Like somebody's walking down the street and all of a sudden a light comes on and goes, man, maybe I should get an abortion today. Where's the nearest telemedicine clinic? Representative Kester, this thinking is wrong and quite frankly insulting to the women of Iowa, especially rural, low-income women. Women in Iowa have a brain. They are thoughtful. They make considered, well-thought-out decisions. Contrary to Republican opinion, women, even rural women, have the ability and the right to make their own decisions on matter of their own bodies and their reproductive health care needs. And Representative Kester, they don't need any of you or any of your Republican colleagues to make that decision for them. So I'm going to trust the women of Iowa, even rural women of Iowa. And I'm going to trust that they are as thoughtful and as caring and, yes, as spiritual as you and the rest of your Republican colleagues. It's time for you to trust the women of Iowa. This is already the most difficult decision any woman in Iowa could ever make. There's no need to make that decision even more difficult. Do the right thing. Look at the facts. Vote no on House File 2175. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Johnson, Representative Jacoby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'm a proud dad of 2 daughters, proud to be married to my wife, Lynette. Would Representative Kester yield, please?
Will the gentleman yield? You are in order.
Thank you. Representative, does this bill at all affect prostate screening?
No.
Thank you. So thank you very much. I want to make sure that it's okay for men to use telemedicine, but we're restricting women's health care. Unbelievable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the lady from Story, Representative West Rochelle, for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I apologize for the second time. This is so disappointing that the first night of real debate in the Iowa House, we're talking about abortion. In the past 4 years, we have had 30 bills aimed at restricting a woman's right to make her own health care choices. 30. And you wonder how the media picked up on the term the war on women. So the FDA 14 years ago put out guidelines for how RU486 should be used to terminate a pregnancy. 14 years ago. I am so happy that my doctor and my kid's doctor and my husband's doctor read research over 14 years and change their protocol when it makes sense on every procedure and every drug. I can't imagine a doctor who wouldn't use the most recent research on what's most effective. Imagine giving a woman 3 pills for a medication abortion when all it takes is 1. Thank goodness for research. Thank goodness that doctors are ethical and follow good protocol. We talk a lot about how our faith and how religion and our spirituality impacts our decisions that we make. Fortunately, we have the freedom to worship as we please. And quite frankly, this bill takes away much of that freedom because we don't all believe the same thing. I was raised an ELCA Lutheran. My sister's an ordained ELCA Lutheran pastor. We don't lack faith. When I looked up what the ELCA has to say about abortion, it was a 12-page document because guess what? This isn't a black and white issue. This has a lot of gray area in it. There's nothing black and white about it. And the ELCA, I'm just going to quote a part of it, says, what is legal is not necessarily moral. What is moral should not necessarily be enacted into law. Laws cannot enforce Christian love, but in principle and application, they should be just. Representative Windschuttle, who is the primary sponsor of this bill, has made it clear, he made it clear in subcommittee that it is his goal to end abortions in Iowa. This completely and totally would restrict. Certainly this is just a little inroads. This is a small inroad, but it means that this form of abortion is available to some women, those who have access to a doctor in their geography, but it's not available to the ones who live in rural Iowa where there is no doctor who will offer them this service. And they have to use telemed. We will continue to resist limiting access to safe early abortions in rural Iowa. There's confusion amongst many, I think on the other side of the aisle anyway, about why women are screaming about a war on women. There's a lot of talk. Oh, I respect you. Representative Wessel-Kroschel, I respect you. I've heard that quite a few times. And what I often say is, actions speak louder than words. This bill is not respectful to women. This bill is not respectful to me as a woman. This bill takes away decisions that I should have on my own. Doctors who provide abortions are scared. They don't go public. They don't talk about it. And on the rare occasion that they'll talk to me about it, this is what they say. They say that most women have never thought about this, hoped that they didn't have to think about it. But when it was their time to make a decision, when they had to make a decision about it, they said to the doctor, I am so thankful that I get to make this decision. I am so thankful that the government didn't make this decision for me. Whether they choose to have the abortion or not, this needs to be their decision. Representative Hartzell appealed to our emotions on the baby. And Representative Hartzell, I am somebody who has loved babies since I was a tiny, very young woman. I wasn't a young woman, I was a girl. I'm the first person to go to the baby in the room. But I've also raised two wonderful, wonderful children. And I want to let you know that we as women know about babies. We love them, we adore them, but we also know that they have the challenges they bring. They have colic, the sleepless nights, the finances, the disciplinary challenges, the education challenges, the birth defects, the mental health issues, the learning disabled. The list goes on. And what women do know is that we know where our limits are. We absolutely know where our limits are, whether we're ready, whether we're physically ready, whether we're emotionally ready, whether we're financially ready to be parents. And we have the right to make those decisions. This is big government intruding in our lives in the most personal way possible. How could we allow government to make decisions about our reproduction? The argument that we should delay this decision, that by not allowing medical abortions through telemedicine will help a woman delay the decision so that she'll change her mind. We are not flippant people. We are not thoughtless people. We have thought about our reproduction for many, many years. We deserve the respect to make those decisions. We're aware of our reproduction. We're aware of the consequences of our actions. We are informed. We read, and we make decisions based on information. Real information, not the stuff that happened 14 years ago, not the stuff that some doctor in an emergency room said he saw a woman who might have had a medical abortion, but maybe not. She wouldn't tell him. So maybe, but maybe not. We look at data. We look at the research, and the research says this is safe. It happens early in pregnancy, and it's should be our choice. We are not ignorant, and we would like you to stop treating us as if we are. I had the opportunity to read a young woman respond to an anti-choice video online. The young woman happens to be a friend of my son's. I'd actually never met her until this weekend, but she responded with a long array of why she believed that we needed to make this a woman's choice. And in the end, she said, I will not judge. It's time for you all to come to the decision that we will not judge. It's not our decision. It's a woman's decision. Get big government out of my doctor's office. We may disagree about the reason a woman may choose to have an abortion, but we have to agree that protecting a woman's health and safety at all times is paramount. This bill does not protect our health. It does not protect our safety.
Representative West Rochelle, your time has expired. And seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes Gentleman Polk, Representative Kester, for closing remarks on House File 2175.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I appreciate the important discussion that we've had tonight. I thank those that served on the HR committee for the thorough discussion we held Thursday night. I thank Ranking Member Representative Wessel Crochelle for her comments now and before and during the subcommittee. Representative Joel Fry for service on that. Representative Winschittle for being lead sponsor in the bill. And I want to specifically mention in the amending process, I appreciate Representative Hartzell and Representative Taylor and others who worked hard to look at the best way to fashion an amendment to the original bill that would bring forth what's best for Iowans. There are several quick matters I wish to address in closing on this before we vote. The rural health care matter for women. I share with you this bill does not limit health care access for rural women. The bill does not limit in one address or any location a woman's ability to seek health care from a primary physician or a health care clinic or from any other clinic that can provide this medicine. It does not eliminate that capacity in any of those locations. It does one thing. It strictly prohibits one unsafe procedure. Iowans have made clear in polling that they support the ban of this procedure. They have many reasons, and I just want to emphasize that this is across every demographic studied in a legitimate and very, very recent study. The bill ensures that women have the best possible standard of care, and we take one unsafe procedure off the table, out of Iowa. I want to submit to you that 10 out of the 10 members of the Iowa Board of Medicine expressed specific safety concerns that telemedicine abortions violate the standard of care. I want to share specifically only from two. There were 2 of the 10 that did not vote to ban, but expressed their concerns. I won't name them, but person 1 would vote for a rule that specifically addressed the safety concerns, those that have been documented in the testimony and in the review of the many documents reviewed by the Iowa Board of Medicine. The other person was a doctor who voted no. There were 7 doctors. The other 6 had expressed reasons for wanting safer procedures for Iowans. Allow me to quote direct from their minutes. The expression of concern about the training of clinic staff members who performed the ultrasound scan. Also expressed concern that the doctors have a responsibility to ensure that the patients have access to emergency care if and when there are complications. Went on to speak of health and safety of rural Iowa women. On the matter of safety, on the matter of Iowa code, beyond the evidence at the national level where there were 14 deaths, and yes, I did finally find the documentation of the 4 types of death, but I believe in the essence of brevity, I'll avoid going into detail on that, focus more for just a moment as I close relative to the Iowa challenges in violation of what is the standard of care. The patient-doctor relationship is written into what is expected. It is possible to have a patient-doctor relationship by telemedicine. I believe sponsors of the bill support telemedicine, but not this unsafe procedure used to terminate pregnancy. The challenge there is that the doctor is not able to do the physical exam. That also is a huge part of the unsafe matter in this procedure. There are many kinds leading to death or the other thousands of documented complications from this procedure that relate to the quality of that physical examination. And I submit to you, it is not credible to have a nurse or a CMA perform that exam and provide a report to a physician to determine whether or not it is a safe procedure in terms of the age and the location of the embryo and other factors that are very important in that decision. So, giving the number of ways in which FDA and the standard of care in Iowa are violated in the way this procedure is conducted in Iowa today, it is important that we ban it for the safety of women across our state. The procedure is unsafe. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you it is time that we vote on this bill.
The gentleman from Polk moves the bill be read for the last time and placed on its passage. Are there objections? Chair hears none. The clerk will read.
House File 2175, a bill for an act relating to the use of telecommunications technology and terminations of pregnancies and providing penalties, be it enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Iowa.
The question now is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed shall vote no. The clerk will receive your vote. H. Miller of Webster votes no. Sands votes aye. Have you all voted? Please state your point.
Is there not a rule in the House that there are not to be pictures taken of the voting boards?
If some then we will check the rule for clarification, but at this point, we believe that it states that it is only on non-recorded votes. It is only on non-recorded votes. This is a record vote. Have you all voted? The clerk close the machine and record your vote. The House will pay attention to the results of the vote. Those voting aye, 55, nay, 42, absent or not voting 3. The bill having received the constitutional majority is declared to have passed the House. Are there objections to the title? Chair hears none. The title is agreed to. Is there any other business? Chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, Representative Hagenow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please message House File 2175 to the Senate.
You've all heard the motion. Are there objections? Chair hears none, and the motion prevails. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, Representative Kester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the passage of House File 2175, now message to the Senate, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw House File 2073 because it deals with the same subject.
You've all heard the motion. Are there objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Is there no business to come before the House? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, Representative Hagenow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House adjourn until Wednesday, February 12th at 8:30 a.m.
You've all heard the motion. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.